Hi everybody, and welcome to Cooking with Chris, but sadly today without Chris. You have me. Chris isn't well this week, so we wish her a speedy recovery. But the recipes that I'm presenting to you today are actually my own. I've been fooling around in the kitchen. Sometimes that goes well, sometimes it's disastrous, but this recipe I'm really excited about. It's my new turkey meatball recipe. I love meatballs, and I probably have about 10 different variations of different meats to use and different seasonings and things, because you can cook batches of meatballs and keep them in the fridge. And then you run in, you're hungry, you've only got 10 minutes. That's like a classic time to make a bad choice on food, but you have a bucket of meatballs sitting right there. You can grab 3 or 4 and just keep going, and I love them for that. So the meatballs that I've developed now have been in response to your questions. A lot of people are missing Mexican food, and I really understand. I love Mexican food too. So I've developed Mexican-inspired meatballs. Now, the recipe that I'm using today is probably not for kids. This one is a little spicy, very bold flavors. You know, Chris and I love our bold flavors. So if you are cooking for kids, you might want to tone this one down a little bit. So here's what I started with. Of course, I went to Trader Joe's, and the recipe is really simple. You can see here on the board, it's an egg, a package of their taco seasoning mix, and about 2/3 of a can of beans. I really like kidney beans and pinto beans. I'm not such a big black bean fan, but any of the beans are fine. And the black bean thing, I know how healthy they are. I just don't like them that much, but you can eat those. They're great. I really support them. They're a good health choice. For myself, I like kidney, and that's why I used these today. So what I did was I put 2/3 of the can of kidney beans, and like I always do, I rinsed the beans, like drained them and rinsed them, so I just had the clean, fresh beans. I added the taco mix, and then 1 egg. Trader Joe's nice organic jumbo brown eggs, I love them. So those 3 items went into my food processor for about a minute, and what comes out is sort of the consistency of refried beans. It's soft, it's not liquidy at all, but just a nice soft mix there. So next, what I do is I add that mix to a package of turkey. And I used about 1.5 pounds of turkey, because at Trader Joe's the turkey I like tends to come in about 1.5 pounds package, and it just seemed to work really well. So I stir the bean mix through the turkey, and this is what I end up with. It's nice and soft, and actually I should add this back in because I held it back last night when I was preparing this. And I literally just stir it through with a fork. Make sure it's really well combined. Make sure that all of the turkey has been fully stirred through with the mix, and you end up with a nice smooth mixture. And then, keeping it simple, I used Trader Joe's frozen sweet corn. I love this stuff. It's delicious and it's organic. There's cilantro and also about 1/2 cup of onion. So it's 1/2 cup each of the cilantro, the onion, and the corn, and I literally just throw them in. I pre-measured these. Now with the corn, I chose to cook it first, and that's why it's a little bit blackened. How I like to cook this corn is I put just about a teaspoon or maybe a little less of coconut oil into a pan, and I'll pre-cook at least half of the package of corn because I use it in so many different things. So you put the oil in, get it hot, throw the corn in and cover it, and cook it on medium heat for about 3 minutes. Take the cover off, give it a stir, move it around, cook it for another 2 to 3 minutes, medium heat, not high, and then the corn comes out perfect every time. And I said a teaspoon of coconut oil. I bet I use about half that. I use the littlest spoon I have and just get a little bit. So 1/2 cup of each of those 3 things, and again, just stir it through. This is the easiest thing. This couldn't have taken 10 minutes to put all this together. Now, because this is quite a soft mix, I chose not to barbecue these. My barbecue, there's some gaps, and I didn't want bits falling through. So the first time I made these, I baked them. I made them into little, about 1.5 inch round meatballs, and I baked them at 350 for 25 to 30 minutes. I think I probably could have had the oven just a little bit hotter and got them done a bit faster. But you can see how good that looks. I mean, that just looks amazing. So remember, this is kind of on the spicy side. This is the Trader Joe's taco mix that I just found out about a week ago. It is spicy. I'm sure it says that on the package. It said it on the shelf as well. So if you're not into spicy, find another one that's not got quite as much kick. But I think it's delicious. It's amazing stuff. So that's it. It's all stirred through. You can either put it on the pan, or how I cooked these instead of using the oven tonight, I made little patties. And you can see how cute those turned out. I just made little meatball sizes and then squished them down into a frying pan. I was using a non-stick skillet. I just smushed them down gently with the fork, and I think they cooked about 5 minutes on each side on a medium heat. Maybe it was a little less than that. I forgot to time that one. But how great is that? That's so easy and it's so fast, and now I'll have a mountain of them in my fridge and I'll probably eat them for 2 meals a day all weekend. So these also, by the way, go really well on a salad. If you use maybe the Trader Joe's mixed leaf, or you could even put them in the brown rice tortilla with some other fillings. They went great with avocado. Really versatile and super, super yummy and really filling. So that's the new turkey meatballs.
What would one serving size be?
One serving size, you can measure them after they're done. It's a little tricky, and that's what makes this more of a phase 3 recipe, is that, because there's so many other things in there and it's going to be hard to get, your exact serving size. For me, 3 of those, I'm going to guess and say that's about 4.5 ounces of turkey. But again, it's hard to tell with all of the other stuff mixed in. But 3 of those, honestly, is a meal. So yeah, if you're on phase 2 or 3, I'd say 3, maybe 4 of them, depending on the size. But you'll know because you'll be full. And there's not as much beans as there is turkey. So I'm using the turkey more as the serving size choice, because obviously 10 ounces of beans would be 5 servings of beans. And there's a lot more than 5 servings of food in this nice big bowl. So that's the turkey meatballs. Great for barbecues and stuff like that as well, of course. Now, the next thing I made, I first served these as a dessert at a barbecue that I had a year ago. And I know last week Chris and I talked about these in Cooking with Chris. These are barbecued fruit skewers, or they would have been if my barbecue hadn't run out of gas at 9 o'clock last night when I was making them. I turned it on, it started to heat up, and then the gas was gone. So I actually broiled these, and that's why they didn't turn out quite as blackened and pretty as they would have been from my barbecue, but they are still delicious. There's only 5 on here because I taste tested one, and the 6th one was absolutely yummy. What I did was I took a peach and a nectarine and Trader Joe's sliced pineapple. Of course, you could buy a whole pineapple, but I was a little pressed for time, and when the pineapple's all cleaned up and ready to go for me, sometimes I need that. So with the skewers, remember we talked about last week, you need to soak these for 20 minutes in water before you put them on the barbecue. And you want smaller pieces. I think that, these are really cute looking little skewers, and what I like about the smaller pieces is each piece of fruit is bite size, because there's nothing worse than getting a big chunk of fruit on a skewer and then you have to try and cut it or bite it and half of it falls off. I really like finger foods for barbecues. So what I do is I cut just about half of the piece of fruit off. Sometimes the seed comes away really easily. Some peaches you can just cut around the middle and turn the halves and you've got 2 perfect halves. That doesn't happen to me very often. My mom was great at that, but not so much for me. So I cut my almost half section and then cut that in 4. And these will shrink down a little bit as you cook them. I've also got a really nice ripe nectarine here. I wish you could smell what this smells like. It's so good. I love summer fruits. Oh, this one's just not going to cooperate. There we go. You can see how juicy those are as well. They're just delicious. So I cut that in 4ths as well. And then the pineapple. And pineapple is just amazing on the barbecue. And these are about 1/2 inch sections. And again, if you're on the plan, you can figure out how many servings of fruit these are going to be. You probably get about 2 of these in a serving. So I like to do half skewers because I think that that's a good serving size. And it's an easy piece to be able to hand around to people. But you make the full skewer and then cut it afterwards, because otherwise you end up with half a skewer with a nice pointy end and half a skewer with 2 blunt ends, which I know about because I did it. As I experiment, I learn these things. So I put half of my fruit on and make 1 skewer, and then I leave a gap, and that gives me my 2nd skewer. And if any of the pieces of fruit are too big, you can trim them down a little bit as well, because you want them to be sort of about equal size. See, and there I've got 2 ready to go, and you can even barbecue them as a whole one and then cut them right before you serve them too. So when you're barbecuing them, make sure you turn them fairly often. Do let them brown up a little bit. They are really, really yummy, you know, when they get that kind of barbecued look to them. The fruit will caramelize a little bit. I know there was a recipe that called for maybe brushing a little honey and cinnamon on these when you were done, but I thought not. Honey is more sugar and extra calories, and if I have a little bit of honey or something really sweet like that, it tends to kick in a sugar craving for me. And I really think you'll find that when you barbecue this fruit, it comes out so sweet and so yummy. You can serve it hot, you can let it get cold, it's just as delicious either way. And then one last thing that I chose to do last night, I bought some grapes. And I remembered being by a pool and being served some frozen grapes. And this is the yummiest summer treat. And you know, now it's 100 degrees all across the country or more. And this is such a good idea. If you have people around and you're looking for appetizers, or you're out by the pool with the kids, frozen grapes are awesome. So what I did was I got a toothpick and I put 2 or 3 grapes on each one. I made sure that the grapes were nice and dry before I put them in the freezer. And I actually put them in a plastic container and then just covered it with some saran wrap and stood them up, just little grape soldiers in my freezer. And I actually let them freeze overnight. They were perfect. I'm sure they would have been done in just a couple of hours. That would have been fine too. They do unfreeze fairly quickly, so I wouldn't take them to a picnic somewhere where you don't have refrigeration. But if you're at home and you're having a party, you can pass these around as a little plate of snacks, and they're, you know, they're cool and they're different and they're really yummy. And it's, you know, it's just something surprising for people. If you're used to seeing chips and dip and you get a frozen grape, it's like, wow, how cool is that? So that's my little summer suggestion for a low-calorie and yummy treat. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you by the pool.